Welcome to Mark My Words, a show that searches for the fork in the road in life, the place where the turning point in the journey of entrepreneurship and life can be found. Let's meet each other at the crossroads on Mark My Words. Today, I have a guest who is really all about your financial growth, especially if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner who is trying to navigate wealth building and financial independence. They have been in financial advising for a few years. They have a holistic approach that helps entrepreneurs not only manage wealth, but also align their financial success with their personal fulfillment. They are the Director of Financial Planning at Harmony Asset Management. They are the creator of Harmony Wealth. Oh boy, I botched that. Creator of Harmony Wealth Academy. And if you can allow me to just say one more thing that I read off of their LinkedIn profile, just to give you an idea of what kind of episode you're in for today. For Monica Kaufman, it's about changing how you think, feel, and act with money while learning how to use the system to empower your goals. She's going to show you how. Monica, welcome to Mark My Words. How you doing today?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It's a little overcast and rainy again here in Florida, but overall, hey, why I can't complain.
How's the citrus? Is it growing?
Is what growing? The
What's
citrus?
the citrus season in Florida? Is it too late or are you done with it or
I honestly don't know when exactly it is. I've only been living in Florida for a few years, and
okay.
that's that's not a topic that I've actually studied up on. So I don't know. I am gonna have an expert on citrus on the show very soon. They're actually the founder of Matt's Organic, the Matt's Orange Juice, if you've heard of him.
Okay. I have to look that up. I think that sounds familiar. So that should be fun.
Yeah, they're from Florida, and it's like a Florida product. I don't think I've seen it too far outside of here. I could be wrong, but I guess they will tell me more. I know it's an international brand, and I know they specialize obviously in citrus. So that's a
Okay.
sneak peek of something to come in a few weeks. Right now, I have you here with me today, Monica, and we're going to try to help some people, especially from an entrepreneurial standpoint, about
Okay.
managing their wealth and, just how they feel and just the relationship with money. So before I get too far invested in that part of our conversation,
hmm
I do know that your life and career has been a lot about finances and money. As I have to cough for a second.
You okay?
Look at that trick right there. That was only 2 seconds of our time, and throat's already getting dry. I don't know if that's a good omen, but I just want to talk a little bit about your interest in economics and finances. This is something you're very passionate about as an adult, but is this something that you saw yourself getting involved with growing up? Where did you see yourself going with your life and career, maybe way back when?
So when I was younger, very young, I thought I wanted to be a doctor like my father. And then somehow or other, I transitioned into the idea of becoming a diplomat and realized that I'm a little too direct for that. That was one of those moments where, the grandma sat me down and said, let's let's talk about who you are and who you're not. So had that conversation. And I really thought that I'd wind up being a lawyer, if that makes sense. But, you know, it's hard to explain, but I went into economics and I realized my problem with it was nobody uses it. Nobody needs an economist. I'd rather have a conversation with you and talk about something that's of value to you than talk about numbers. So,
Well, I took economics for a short time. I don't even know if I finished that semester of economics, and I don't remember much from it. I all so every like math related thing that I took in school, I kind of learned over time that it just wasn't for me. I wasn't really doing what I should be doing, which is something creative, whether it's being the host of Mark My Words or working in television the way I have. I have no business telling anybody about economics or how to manage wealth or money or anything like that, which is why I'm jumping at the opportunity to have you on the show because I feel like I could probably learn a lot. Hopefully, the audience will learn a lot too, but I'm a little selfish with this one. I want to learn something that maybe I didn't know.
well, I think the reality is 80% of our population is technically, according to the industry, considered financially illiterate. You don't understand the terms, you don't necessarily know how to navigate the system, and that's awful. And I've heard people say, well, why don't we teach it in schools? The schools need to focus on reading, writing, math, history, some of the basics, and really hone down on that. And unfortunately, this is a problem that's been going on for 4 or 5 generations. So you are not alone.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know that this is something that I feel only gets worse as the
Mhm.
generations go on. I know it gets talked about, maybe not enough. I know some people talk about the fact that maybe this is the kind of topic that should be studied in school, like not beyond college, like in, high school or
Right.
whatever level you want to start at. You can maybe speak to that a little bit. But this is something that there needs to be like a fork in the road, a turning point where we all get better and manage better and control that part of our lives better because it makes a difference in our happiness.
I agree. And so first off, one of the things that I would say is that when I started in advisory, I had a moment where I got 2 referrals. And what they did was they taught me that the Millionaire Next Door book was right. Have you heard of that book? Do you know what that is?
No,
Okay, so it came out in the 90s and it was written by 2 researchers who went and interviewed millionaires. And what they found was that the popular idea of what it means to be financially successful and what it takes to get there is not even close to the reality. So the millionaire next door typically is somebody who is a business person, but even if they're not, they're people who just live beneath their means and invested and that over time it grows. And so, the millionaire next door is not necessarily the one driving the most expensive car, is not the one living in the biggest house or the nicest house. It's that mindset of being able to just defer gratification and build something with it that gets them to where they want to go.
I can kind of relate to the whole feeling like a millionaire because sometimes when I get all of my bills all up to date, all zeroed out, I do feel like a millionaire. I feel like the world is at my feet. And then when I start saving, I really
Mhm.
feel like the world is at my feet. And I'm not by any means a millionaire. I'm not close to it. I'm not anything of it. But it makes a difference when, in just how you feel when you're all caught up and you're organized. And I know I'm talking like I'm an expert, which I am not,
You're
but
not.
I
You're not
I
talking
do
like that.
know a little bit about how that those kind of things make me feel.
And I think that's really normal. And let me give you an analysis. And I think what you're saying is just what almost everybody goes through. Okay. But if you think about physical fitness, You think about there's four stages of it, and we all go through it. So there's function, where you start off, and that's really everything has to work. And then once it works and everything is healthy, that's step number two, because everything is working together. And then step number three is fitness. And fitness is when you're able to carry the load. So you're at that piece, financially fit, when you're able to carry the load of paying your bills and then funding your goals. Okay. So that feels good. And it feels good in physical fitness and it feels good in personal financial fitness, right? So then the final stage is performance. And performance for financial means you've built up enough wealth underneath you that work becomes optional. And that's the point where, every day is Saturday if you want it to be. Okay. And
And
that's where I think a lot of people really want to be. So the question is, how do you get there? And it's a very similar journey to the physical metaphor of doing it, but essentially it starts with the mind. You have to believe that it is your ability and you were created to not just do it, that it's your responsibility, but that you can do it. You cannot go where your mind has not gone before you.
And I think that's a lot of entrepreneurs' goals, or anybody who doesn't necessarily want to be bound to a corporate life or
Mhm.
career, is to get to that point where they can take a little bit of a step back and they're in control of their life in that way. Ultimately, I think we all want to have control of our lives, but
Right.
there's certain things we need to do in order to get there.
Right. And it starts with accepting that this is something that you can do and will do. Okay. And it's that mindset. And then it's also a question of stepping back and literally, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, and I've said this to people, you need to get out of your own way. Okay. And sometimes you need to get out of your own damn way. And what does that mean? It means sometimes you need to say, okay, what do I think about money? Where did this come from? And why am I not getting to where I want to go? Is this really the mindset and the approach to money that I need to take to actually achieve the goals I want to achieve? And then the next piece is two, one of the reasons why you need to learn how to navigate the system is because we all live in this system. And it's like, look, do you have a passport?
Not currently.
Okay, but you remember when you first got your passport?
No, because I've actually never had one.
Oh,
So
okay.
you learn something new about me.
Okay. Well, I remember I had to get a passport and I had a deadline. And this was recently, and I had let my passport expire so long ago, it was not a question of mailing it in and just getting a new one. And set up an appointment. It took weeks to get one, and it was 72 miles away from my office. Took off a day for this, drove out there. Well, I prepared for it, I downloaded the application, and then I had it all set up. The night before, I had a nightmare about it, went back into my office, downloaded a couple of extra spares, grabbed some additional documentation just in case, took my old passport with me, drove off. Went in there, and that I stood in line, I was prepared, and they yelled at me when they found out I was there for a passport, stand against the wall. Okay. Stood against the wall, waited quietly, walked up to the passport guy, handed him my application. He looked at it and looked at me and said, "You weren't supposed to go this far in the application. You went too far." Okay. Turned and said to him, went into my folder. I said, "Okay, here's a fresh application. Could we restart the conversation?" He was shocked. And he looked at me and he said, "I wasn't prepared for that." I said, "Okay." Opened up the folder wide and said, "What do you need?" He looked at the folder, grabbed what he wanted. He said, "I'll be back in a minute." Came back 3 minutes later and said, I wasn't prepared for you to have your stuff together." And I looked at him and said, "What else do you need from me? What do you need from me? What do I need to do? I need to get this." 12 minutes later, I walked out having watched the next person come in and get told to, stand against the wall. But I had my passport within 2 weeks. So that's the thing. If you want this, you have to learn how to navigate the system and be prepared for the setbacks to get to what the goal is. Does that make sense?
It does. So that leads me to ask, you have a lot of experience working with entrepreneurs and business
Mm-hmm.
owners on this topic. It's something you specialize in. In your experience, what have you learned? Like, what ways are entrepreneurs getting in their own way financially and just with growing their business?
Okay, so one of the things you need to do is you need to do some financial defenses. You need to look at your life a little bit more holistically. And what I mean by that is, I want you to look and understand your business is a separate entity. Your business is not you. So you do have to do business planning and you have to do personal planning. There are some other things too where I would say to them, my first experience with this was when I was a teenager. My father's cousin owned a very successful business and they'd always done their planning. And he wound up having a heart attack. And so they were 50-50 owners in the business. This is before LLCs. And they had a policy there that literally provided the money to buy out the business in the case of death or disability. So 30 days after his heart attack, he was bought out of his business with enough money to provide for himself and his family for the rest of his life. Okay. That's the type of thing you need to think about. The other thing you need to think about is if your business is your biggest asset and something happens to you as the key person, 80 to 90% of your business is gone if you don't have a succession plan in place. So these are some of the things that we talk about and we teach and how to work with it and navigate with it. And this is part of it, but it starts with understanding what wealth is. Wealth pays you regardless of whether or not you go to work.
What does a good succession plan look like in your opinion? What are what's maybe a good example that you know of?
Well, not just that case that I mentioned to you, but having worked with business brokers in the past, I can tell you that you have a funding mechanism. So let's say somebody has a business and they have multiple employees. What are you going to do if something happens to you tomorrow? Or I remember teaching a seminar for a group of entrepreneurs, and one of them had received a fatal cancer diagnosis. How was he going to sell the business to fund what he wanted to fund for his family? How did he convert that over? Selling a business can take 18 months to 2 years. So it starts with honestly knowing your finances and knowing your financials for your business and for your personal life. And then it's a question of having a conversation. What I want to tell people is to get out of your own way, I need you to be the CEO. So you're the CEO of your financial life. Don't try to do everything. You can't be chief cook and bottle washer on your financial life. You may need a team. So let's talk about what you need in terms of a team and how do you know and how do you manage the team because you're the boss. So you need to know enough to be able to have those conversations with confidence.
And having somebody to delegate work is a big game changer. I know for me, I'm still pretty much running everything on my own. But my wife has started kind of getting a little more involved and just having her as not just the emotional support and being a cheerleader, but also jumping in and being interested and just having somebody to bounce things off of, just that little bit, it goes a long way towards relieving the pressure and the stress. And I personally, so I'm very much a very resourceful person. And
Mhm.
I know I'm a very probably overly independent about some things. I know I need to form a more of a team at some point. It's not quite the time, but I know that I need to, and I know
Mhm.
that it's important. And I've heard the stories from a couple of my guests who, once they started delegating, just what a difference it made. And I can't wait to also have that moment in time.
You will, and it's tough. It's tough to let go, and it's an emotional thing. It's okay. And it becomes a balance because at some point, and you'll find this, when things get busier, you'll find you're much more efficient and the revenue improves and everything improves because you've taken certain things off your plate. And I'm glad that your wife is getting involved. That's great news.
Yeah, she's becoming more interested in what I'm doing just because of some of the things we talked about before we hit record, I think she's saying, hey, I think, this is just more than just a hobby and fun. I never really
Right.
looked at doing this as a hobby, but I had to at least in the beginning feel it out and see if I liked doing it or felt like I was good at it. And it turns out that I just love to talk. So here we are 5 years later. But
That's awesome.
yeah, I mean, not to go on and on about that backstory in my life, but I mean, it makes a big difference to just have somebody there to just for creating shorts. I just started creating shorts on my YouTube page and just the input that I've gotten there on how to do it and just their perspective. It makes a big difference. Just the suggestion of doing it has made a big difference. So even just that little bit of input
You
makes a
you
big
wouldn't
difference.
you wouldn't believe how much a little bit of a shift. And one of the things that I ascribe to, and I think is very sound. Have you ever read James Clear's book Atomic Habits?
I'm not.
Okay, it's fabulous. And at one point, he talks about the fact that you can do really amazing things by small little changes that compound every day. So small efficiencies. And he uses a British cycling team and their success and what they learned from that to demonstrate this. But small efficiencies build up every day and become huge. And those little inputs make a difference. One of the things that I would encourage people to do is if you find a coach to be helpful in other areas of your life, understand there are some people who can read it and then do it. I personally have found that with my physical fitness, when I have coaching, even if it's virtual coaching, okay, I go harder, I go smarter, I go safer, and it's much more effective. And so it's faster. Some people can listen to somebody on the radio, read a book, and they can implement and they're good to go. Not everybody's that built that way. I wish I was more like that, that I could just read it and do it. And sometimes I am, but most of the time I'm not. So that's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
And then some of us create a podcast so that we can learn things as well. So there's a lot of different reasons I created this show, but that's one of them because I've come to find that hey, especially with this platform and this niche that I developed of talking to entrepreneurs and just the entrepreneurship umbrella, it gives me an opportunity to talk about topics that not only are hopefully important to the audience, but are important to me. And I'm talking to all these fantastic people, very smart people like you, and learning about all these things. I know this is kind of sounding like a advertisement for everybody to create a podcast, but just really just going into business for yourself and the learning that goes into that and just the ability to meet all kinds of people. And I'm missing the word because I'm getting old and I'm sleepy, but I'm not quite getting the word that I'm looking for, but and I'll just keep kind of stumbling over that. So let me ask you while I am thinking about it. Networking. Networking was the word I was looking
Mhm.
for. Such a difficult word to remember. But what let me jump in because you talked a couple times about when every day is Saturday,
Mhm.
preparing for retirement 2 to 5 years before your target date, which is something not that I'm really too close to retirement, but I'm inching a little closer. So I think about that kind of thing more. Talk a little bit about that. I know you talked a little bit already, but talk a little bit more about that mindset and getting people to think about that, especially those running their own business and having to think of like not to keep stacking question after question, but do you get people who are like, I never really thought of the fact that I might need a backup plan?
Actually, we do. And what I tend to see is that people wind up coming to me as an advisor, and that's not why I'm here, but they come to me because either they're afraid that something's gone wrong, or usually there's some relationship along the way and their financial history has gone wrong. Okay. And so they're looking and they're saying, what do I need to know so that I can manage this better and I can manage my relationships better or I can do better with this? I get that. And I think what a lot of people don't do when they own a business is they don't actually take advantage of the retirement planning system and how to deal with that. And there are lots of different ways, but learning it and interfacing with somebody who's going to really do the planning on that is critical. And that's something, I mean, I really stress teaching this more than I can say because you need to have money there to fund it. And it just takes time. And a lot of business owners don't think that way. It's about being flexible and figuring out how to make the system work. So,
And I think that kind of goes back to why I haven't really pulled the trigger on hiring a staff because not only do I have to think about sustaining what I'm doing and actually making money for myself and to grow in that way, but you also have to think about if I'm adding somebody to the team, I'm probably gonna want to pay them something as well. Am I equipped to do that? Is that some kind of thing that you run into as well in
I
your?
think yeah, I think there's always that. And I think that there are a lot of people who like to do the virtual team. I can't because of my licenses. That becomes very, very difficult to do. But you can. And if you can find virtual help that can help you, you get the help that you need for the amount of time that you need it, and you're not paying for a full-time employee. The other thing that is very difficult, and I've had this conversation, you might want to talk to somebody who does HR and say, okay, if I were to take somebody on, what does this look like? And you'd be surprised how, talking to somebody who's an HR person who say, oh, if you're only going to have one or two employees, here's the little things that you need that'll protect you. But, one of the other piece that I've said to people is make sure that you have the right entity formation. Sit down with an attorney and make sure this is right. Okay. And the final thing that I always say to people is, make sure your finances, your personal is not your business and not, you don't blend them. Once you do that, you create financial problems and, there might be some other issues. Figure out, sometimes sitting down and learning how to manage this is very helpful. And I mean, I like the idea. There's so many people going into the fractional world that, finding, and I do know some people who are fractional CPAs and fractional business advisors, and it can be very, very useful. But essentially what you're looking for is the team.
You said some things there that's really good. Like I never really even considered maybe getting advice from an HR professional about the taking that step of hiring somebody. And I guess that's where I'm a little flawed and also really strong at the same time. It's great that I'm very independent and I want to take control and I want
Mhm.
to be resourceful, but I don't always think about, oh wow, that's like a real option to ask an HR professional that I trust about the idea of what are the laws, what's the legal stuff that goes into hiring somebody, because it's easy to just think, oh well, cool, I'll put out an advertisement, cool, they're great, they're hired. Boom. There we go. It's a lot more than that.
Right. And that's the whole thing. And the other piece is when you do this as a business person, think about this. It may pay to pay if you find somebody in your network who can do fractional bookkeeping or fractional marketing. If you get, maybe you only need 4 or 5 hours a week.
Right.
Okay. And if somebody else is carrying the administrative and that other piece and you're just writing a check, that might be the way to go when you're first starting out. Buy what you can afford and manage it so that you don't have the headache. Make it as simple as you possibly can. The idea is not to add a layer of complexity. Again, I want you to get out of your own way. If you're handing off some of the job, don't make your life more complicated by doing that.
Well, I'm gonna get out of my own way here and try to do a segue to something I definitely want to make time for because, after all, you are the creator of the Harmony Wealth Academy, and I want to talk a little bit about how you got there and how this academy started, and maybe if you can talk a little bit about. I feel like you've already inadvertently probably talked a lot about what it is, but I'll give you the wheel to really say it more directly.
So I realized that I came from a family. My mother had a very interesting money story. And essentially, she grew up with nothing. She was born in 38 at the tail end of the Depression. And she got her first job between second and third grade. And so she went to college, she pulled herself up, and then she got divorced. And all of a sudden, all that anxiety came roaring into the family. And so my mother didn't learn how to navigate the system, phenomenally successful in every other way, but she hired a financial advisor that I wasn't particularly enamored with. Having said that, she married somebody she's fine, but I realized when I started in the industry and I had read The Millionaire Next Door and I realized that that was real, that I needed to shift the way I thought. And that's a very difficult thing because you marinate as a child and even as an adult in a culture that doesn't necessarily teach you the skills and the mindset and the approach that you need to have. So how do you shift that? And my husband has had some battles with depression, and as part of that, he learned a little bit. He learned a lot about cognitive behavioral therapy. And I kept thinking, okay, how would I do anything with this? And it wasn't until I saw Noom for weight loss that I thought, okay, if they can do this for food, what would it be like to do it for money? So it inspired me to think outside the box. And it wasn't really until the shutdown. So this is like 2 decades worth of thinking. How do I bring this together? And so it's been a 2 decade long journey. So,
Wow. No, one thing, I mean, obviously, that's a really great story to how you got here. But when you said, just your mom
mhm.
working in first and second grade, can you even, I can't imagine having a job in first or second grade. That is mind blowing.
I don't understand how that happened, but she wound up working. She was from Shaker Heights, Ohio. She grew up on what would be called the wrong side of the tracks. And somebody gave her a job because if she didn't have a job, she didn't have the money for school clothes and school shoes. And she
Wow.
wanted to dress well. She wanted to take care of herself. So that's what happened. And she proceeded that way. And she worked all the way through college, all the way through high school. She went to a college, Case Western, before it was Case Western Union Reserve. Um, didn't really have a lot of people like her at the university at that point in time. And so my mom was scrappy and tough and determined and smart. But I can't imagine what she had to go through. I just can't.
I feel like the only people who should be working that young, and they arguably shouldn't either, are like child actors or something. Like that's very young.
You couldn't get away with it now. You really couldn't get away with it now. So
Yeah, you would be hard pressed. I can say that much.
I don't think you're allowed to babysit until you're like 10 or 12 in some states. I mean, but for her, it was a necessity. And somebody, I guess, said, okay, let's help this little kid out.
Well, talk a little bit about Harmony Wealth Academy and what that experience might be like for somebody like me or an
Okay.
entrepreneur out there who is
So
looking.
the Wealth Academy is built into two frameworks. So you have to walk on two legs, so to speak. Okay. And what I'm asking people to do is to shift the way they think, feel, and act. So we'll go through a cognitive approach using the psychological tools to help you understand what a wealth mindset is, understand the tools, and then shift how you think and feel about the money. And while you're doing that at the same time, you're going to be addressing in, again, small steps, marching down the road. So the first part of it is what I call financial defense, making sure, what do you know what people use the term resilience? It's overused, right? What
Yeah.
is resilience to you?
To me,
Yeah.
resilience, oh boy, I could go on for another like 20 minutes talking about resilience. I feel like resilience is like my whole life, you know, it's about when you get kicked down or when you're feeling down about yourself or something that happened, you assess, you think it over, but you don't let it keep you from moving forward with whatever your goal is.
Right.
You know, you keep going.
So yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. I look at it as you get knocked down 5 times, you get back up six. Okay.
I like that.
But so what we're doing is you build financial resilience. So you're gonna get knocked down. The idea is to use some financial defenses to either get you back up a lot faster, or instead of putting you in a position where you're not knocked down, you're maybe like, bend over a little bit because of the wind. So I want people to stay on track. I don't want people to have to, really do a major course correction. So the financial defenses are you build those out and you learn what some of those are while you're shifting how you think and feel with money so that you can then dive deeper into it, and it goes from there. So it scales up, but the key and the most important part is the mindset piece, and that's the piece that really allows you to shift. And it's again one of those things where I really believe if your mind hasn't gone there, you won't go there. But I also tend to believe that if we use the mind appropriately, you will absolutely get there. You will get out of your own way. So,
And I love that theme of getting out of your own way. I really love that's kind of, it feels like that's just really your mantra. And I think it should be just about everybody's mantra because at the end of the day, I feel like really if you're not accomplishing your goals or you're not where you want to be, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, there's a good chance you're probably getting in your own way. Like, I
right.
know I'm getting in my own way with certain things just with running this business, which hopefully over the course of time I'll move more and more out of the way. But I mean, that's like the best mantra for anybody in life, I think.
Well, I think also, and I appreciate that. Thank you. I've seen people with modest incomes retire with millions, and I've seen people with very high incomes really struggle. And essentially, financial freedom is learning everything about money and your relationship and your emotions with it beyond earning the money. Okay, because earning the money really is step one. It's what happens after that that really determines it. And there's nothing here that you cannot learn. I really believe that.
And that's a great way to put it because you can earn all the money in the world, but if you just take that money and spend it on going to X, Y, and Z, like I'm going to go on a lot of trips or whatever, and you're not at least storing some of that away, what good is all the money you're earning?
Right. And the other piece is it's really what are you building? And so what I'll tell people is money is nothing more than a set of tools in your hands. What are you doing with it? Are you building something? Are you hobbling your own ankles? Did you ever see the movie Misery by Stephen King?
I have.
Okay. That scene where the villainess hobbles him, it's like the nightmare, right? I can immediately call that to my mind. That's what people sometimes do to themselves with their money. Please stop doing that. Okay. There's no reason to be afraid of the mallet or the hammer or the saw. Learn to use them. The financial tools are no different. They're not any more difficult for you to learn to use.
And I do want to know, I feel like on this show, and especially in this episode, everything you've asked me about as far as reading, I've said no. I have actually read the book Misery, one of the few books I've read. So just
I saw
putting,
the movie. I couldn't read it. I saw the movie. And that, just to tell you how much that movie impacted me, I can still picture that scene in my mind. I absolutely phenomenal acting, scared the living daylights out of me.
Yeah, I
Was the book
think
as scary?
probably not any more scary than the movie. I mean, I'm very visual,
Mhm.
so the visuals of that movie definitely impact me, much like they have impacted probably everybody.
Got it. No, okay. Yeah, that
So,
unbelievable.
getting back on track a little bit, you talked a bit about the tools, and you also
Mhm.
talk a lot in your work about money is just a tool. Maybe elaborate a little bit on that a little more and how, like, what tools are we neglecting? What tools do we need to use? What tools should we throw out?
Well, on the financial side, I want people to learn how to navigate the system. I want them to understand most people barely scratch the surface, for example, on their 401k. Business owners don't understand that if it's just a solo operation, one person, you can have an affordable 401k. Why would you do that? Well, maybe you're the type of person that might be, susceptible to a lawsuit on a personal side. Okay. There are so many different options. The question is to find the tools that fit you. And it really starts with a vision. What do you want for your life? What do you want it to look like? Tell me who you are and what you're building this and what you are building it for. What does it look like? And once you do that, we can work with the framework to help get you there. Okay. So again, it starts with you and your vision of what you want and what you're building. And then we can work backwards and give you options. But again, nobody should care about your financial condition more than you. You need to be the CEO and drive this. So, what I want to train people to do is to step forward in confidence, not just have resilience, but eventually get to the point where they have what we would call grit, gratitude, resilience, instincts, that wealth instinct, and the tenacity so that you understand the tools and you can hang on when you need to get to where you want. I want to build out what some people would call anti-fragility. Have you heard of what that is?
No, actually.
Anti-fragility is where stress or a challenge makes you stronger. So it doesn't break you, but you sort of can turn into it. You know how to manage it. You have the tools, you have the confidence, and you can let it get stronger. It's like, think about it this way, it's buying a business in a down market because you're buying it at a discount. Okay. You know, you're going to have to get through a down market, but you're able to take on the risk to do it.
I think you just described my whole life with that word and definition. I'm gonna have to remember that one because that I feel like that's my whole life in a nutshell. So, hey, if other people can rebound and can be
Mhm.
stronger, I mean, so can I. And I guess I should reverse that because I like to think I am an example of that.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, I too much, or I should say too little time. I'm getting all mixed up on my words here. But one thing I'm not mixed up on that I want to ask before we run out of time is I'm the kind of person who sets goals mentally and kind of like assesses everything
Mhm.
mentally more than like making a vision board or writing things down and having a list and crossing things off. How do you make sure that people who come to you for help set their goals and stick to them and achieve them?
Okay, so I understand the desire to not write them down. And I sometimes that's a little scary because once you commit it to paper and you write it out, it's like, oh my goodness, here it is. But there is a psychological component that talks about the fact that if you actually write it out, you are more likely to get there. And there's something about programming the mind to actually achieve the goal, and that's part of it. So, one of the things I'm going to offer your community, I have a goal setting program, and it is free. It is totally non financial, but you can come in and it's once a month, and we walk through a very psychologically sound way to achieve your goals, but it also adds in some of that anti-fragility pieces, some of those pieces and how to get stronger and how to sort of say, okay, what area, if I were to deal with it, would most improve my life or most improve the situation in a positive way or taking away all the negative stuff? What is it that I can do? And so you schedule those things first. So that's part of how I do that. But one of the other things that I do, and we walk through in the mind piece, my favorite part is I want you to come up with a future self vision, write it out. And then what I'm going to have you do is record it into your phone. And there's a reason for that. Because now that you've written it out, you've sort of done that. But if you play yourself reading that out loud and you play it every night and every morning, you are more likely to get your subconscious to start moving you in that direction. Okay, so we'll use every available tool, and your phone, you already have it. You might as well use it for a positive reason instead of doom scrolling like I was doing very, very early this morning. So, it's a question of you taking the tool and using it to get you to where you want to go as opposed to not.
Oh man, no more doom scrolling. We gotta, whatever the positive of doom scrolling is, we gotta do that. I think that's great advice. I mean, there's some ways that I write down like my goals
Mhm.
and things that I want to do. Maybe not enough actually business wise. So I feel like that's good advice. That's something that I know that I should probably do a little bit more of. And I actually woke up this morning, middle of the night, and just was thinking, I must have been dreaming about like my plan for the future and just was on a roll thinking about it. I wish that I could remember. I didn't want to write anything down because I wanted to get back to sleep, but I was on a real roll just thinking and listing things off. I don't know how or why that's even relevant, but definitely I'm all for writing. I'm kind of funny in that when it comes to all this, it's all mental. So
Mhm.
I should definitely kind of consider writing it all down a little bit more and holding myself to it, in that
Well,
way.
the group is available. Again, it is totally free and it's about goal setting and it's literally about breaking it down into pieces. So if the goal is to be at a certain place in a year, let's break it down into more manageable pieces. What would you have to do where are you now? Where are you going to be, in a year? And let's break it down into pieces where you manage it by, let's say, quarter, and then each quarter by month, and then each month by week. And so you're much more likely to get there if you do it like that and we walk through that. And that is totally free. And it's something that is a give back because so many people need the help. And then, there's the pieces on the financial pieces. That's part of my program as well. But this is just a community of like minded people who are like you, who are like me, who have a list of things we want to get done. And sometimes it helps to have a peer group of people who are supportive and who want to do the similar things. So.
And while we're on a roll talking about what you offer, is there anything else that you want to add to that as we're getting rounding the corner on this episode?
Well, in the next few weeks, I'm going to have a link for you. And what it is you can sign up for a free 45-minute session with me where we're going to talk about the issues. And we also have and will have a 4-week just on the mindset where you can actually work on that piece and get comfortable with it. And then if you choose to go on further, you can. But the idea is you really need to have that emotional foundation and support so that you can actually build out what you want to build out. So you'll have the links and people can do that. People can reach out to me if they have any questions or concerns, and I'm happy to hear from them.
So before we leave, any advice for anybody who is thinking about maybe taking on the type of work that you've been doing as far as financial planning, advising, any advice you would have for anybody out there listening who
Oh,
wants
that
to
wants to be mean, wants to take my place?
who wants to not take your place, but who wants to be you. Maybe they live in like, I don't know, Germany, you know?
Well, I don't know what they would do in Germany because the system is different, but that's okay. Now, here's the thing. We need more good people in the industry. And by good people, it's people who actually want to take the time to learn to master the craft. It's so many people in the industry are all about the sales and about the emotional relationships and less about the quality of what they're doing for clients. By making clients stronger, clients will demand better from their advisors. And I am 100% for it. I want you, the general public, to get stronger and stronger and stronger and demand better from me and people just like me. But anybody who wants to get in this, you can do this. This is not something you can't do. Take the time to master the craft. It's not just about that sales piece, which is critical, but it's about actually offering substance and service. It takes time. Give yourself the time and make the commitment. I'm still learning. I'm still pushing. Okay. And if you come into the market and you make me better because you're pushing me, that's a good thing. So don't quit, but keep going.
That's it. Just keep on going. That's the mantra of the day. And Monica, thanks again for taking time out of your busy schedule and for not making fun of me for saying Germany. I was trying to think of something that was further away from where you're at, and that's pretty far. So,
You know what? I it'd be kind of fun to find out what it would take to be a financial advisor in Germany. So now I'm like kind of intrigued. Like, what would it
yes,
take?
it's a different ball game. I mean, we could say Hawaii, Alaska, Montana. At least now we're in the U.S. But thanks again for being here, Monica. I had a blast. And just again to kind of sum up who Monica is, she is Director, Financial Planning at Harmony Asset Management. She is also the creator of Harmony Wealth Academy. Monica, thanks for being on Mark My Words.
This was my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity, and I wish you and all of your listeners the very best.
And I echo that sentiment as well. And I wish you continued success. You have such a wealth of knowledge, and I really enjoyed talking to you today. I am Mark Schmidt. You just listen to Mark My Words, and I will see you soon. Bye. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to go on a journey with me into entrepreneurship and life on Mark My Words. If you would like to learn more about me and the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Schmidt or connect with me on Instagram at Nimrod79. Video episodes of Mark My Words, as well as other content, can also be found on the Mark My Words YouTube page. Entrepreneurship can be quite the roller coaster ride. It can be a bit isolating and intimidating, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's meet here next time at the crossroads on another episode of Mark My Words.